Hey guys, and welcome back to Chats with Carissa. So this evening I'm going to be talking about traveling overseas with diabetes because, as I said in previous videos, I am a type 1 diabetic. So I have traveled to basically everywhere I've traveled overseas I've had diabetes with. Now it's a bit challenging sometimes traveling overseas with diabetes because you've got to make sure you've got everything. And it's really interesting in the lead up to it is that I sit down with my sister and we discuss exactly what I need to take. And I always think, and this is something that everyone should do, is that it's always good to take more than less. Because at least if you take more, you know you're going to be prepared in case something happens. Now the worst thing about traveling overseas with diabetes is obviously multiple different things. The first one is the language barrier. So when I was traveling to Vietnam, Cambodia, I was really worried that because I have an insulin pump continuously strapped to me, it's hard to kind of explain to people what it is, especially if they don't speak English. So I found it a bit hard in Vietnam, Cambodia, but a lot of them seem to understand, like I said, diabetes, it has to stay attached to me. So they were pretty understanding in that it was something to do with my health. I say to anyone who is a type 1 diabetic who plans to travel overseas, who's never traveled overseas before, definitely get a letter from your doctor because that'll help people to understand, oh okay, she's meant to be traveling with all this medication, because I do take a lot of needles and things like that. So I have to take them because that's how I survive. Another thing is on the plane. So a lot of people have always asked me, how do I cope on a plane with my diabetes? It's always interesting. So an interesting fact here is when I get on a plane, I keep the time and that to Australia. So I could be going anywhere. So while I'm on the plane, it could be 4 AM in Australia, but it could be a different time wherever I'm going. So I keep it on Australian time until I land. Now, when I'm on a plane, it's probably when it kind of goes a bit out of whack, because obviously 1 minute you're having breakfast, the next minute you're having dinner. So whenever I'm having a meal, I inject myself with insulin. The second bit is when I take off. I was always told that I was to disconnect my insulin pump from my body. Now, not completely disconnect it, that I pull the needle out, but disconnect it, like disconnect the tubing from the needle. Because apparently if you leave it in there, it can actually create bubbles and actually give you a little extra insulin, which you probably won't need. So that's another little advice for anyone who didn't know. Now, one that I noticed when I went overseas wasn't an issue, but was something I was a little worried about, is when I went to Vietnam, Cambodia, we did a stopover in Hong Kong. And I'm not sure if it's at every airport, but at some airports you have your metal detectors and then you have your body scanners. Now apparently, if you're a type 1 diabetic, you're not meant to go through the body scanners because the technology in it can actually cause problems to your insulin pump, because it has like a high degree of not radiation, but has a high degree of some high degree of technology that can actually cause a malfunction to your insulin pump. It was really interesting because I've always been, as from that moment, I'm now completely confused, because when I went there, I was the one who got pulled aside to go to the body scanner. So I went there and I told the security guard of the situation that I can't actually go through there with my insulin pump. I have to take it off. I can't go through the X-ray machine either. So I don't actually know what I'm meant to do with it. Like, am I meant to hand it to them for them to hold while I go through the machine? They said to me that I could go through it and it was fine, and I didn't want to argue with them because they are airport security. So I went through it. It didn't cause a problem, but I'm a little worried because I don't want to go through it again and it causes a malfunction. So I don't know what to do about this. And if anyone who is a type 1 diabetic who has an insulin pump, who's traveled and has gone through a body scanner or knows anything about this, please let me know, because I have absolutely no idea. Because it didn't cause a problem to my insulin pump, and it hasn't, but I just worry that I will go and it will cause a problem next time I travel overseas, which is not that far away. Especially if I don't get a loan pump, which is also a problem as well. Another thing about traveling overseas with diabetes is it's a bit hard to calculate your food, especially because you're not used to the food over there. So when I went to Vietnam, Cambodia, and I'm using them as an example because when I went to England, it was a lot easier to count food, especially same with Norway and Sweden and things like that. But Vietnam, Cambodia was a bit harder because they gave you so much food and it's harder to calculate exactly how many carbohydrates in that create a portion in your food. So what I was told by my dietitian was kind of overestimate just a little bit, because at least if you overestimate, it can be fixed. Whereas if you underestimate, it's going to be a lot harder to fix that. So that's what traveling with type 1 diabetes can be like. It can be a pain, but I often find once you're there, it's a lot easier. Another pain that I found, and I do this all the time, is people, so when you have type 1 diabetes, you obviously got to take all your stuff with you. I don't believe in putting stuff in my suitcase. Our only problem is if it gets lost, I've lost some of it. I tend to put all of my insulin supplies into a backpack. Now I have one of them, I think it's Black Wolf. I have a Black Wolf backpack. My sister, it's my sister's, and she's had it for like 10 years and it's still doing pretty good, and it carries all my diabetes stuff. It carries like 4 boxes. They're 4 big boxes. I'll have to show you in another video, but they're 4 big boxes. They're probably like this big in height and like that wide. They're huge boxes, and I can fit 4 of them in my bag, plus barely my cold pack, which has all my cold insulin stuff in it, including my glucagon and like my Nova Rapid and anything cold that I need to carry, and then obviously a folder for my important documentation. So basically, while everyone else has backpacks with, you know, books and things like that in it, or whatever they take overseas, all of mine literally holds my life. So my life is literally on my back. Because I don't, like, people always thought I was weird saying, but why do you put, you know, all of it in your backpack? Because I know it's there. Because if something happens and I've only got half my insulin in my bag, what if I lose that? And then I have nothing because my suitcase might have gone missing. But I definitely recommend to anyone to probably put it all in your backpack, because it's going to be a lot easier. You're going to know it's there. I've never had troubles with it being in my backpack. And if people question you, just tell them you're type 1 diabetic and it's easy to carry it in your backpack. Now I find, and this is what I really loved the most, was when I flew with Qantas to London, when I first had my insulin pump, they were so nice enough to actually put my cold stuff in the fridge on the plane. Because if you're flying a long hour, you know, your cold stuff may not last a long time. So if you're flying like an 18-hour flight, your cold stuff's not going to last 18 hours. So I would even maybe, when you go to travel, find out if you can actually put your cold stuff in a fridge, because, and I cannot thank the people from Qantas that time enough for actually putting my insulin stuff into a fridge and keeping it cold during the flight. It probably was a huge inconvenience to them, but they were nice enough to do it for me. So I thank them very much. So that's what it's like traveling with type 1 diabetes overseas. There's a few more other things which I will explain at a later date in a different video. Hope you've learned something about my traveling overseas with diabetes. Hope you have a good evening, and be sure to check out my video on celebrity news. Bye!